Good evening, everybody. I'm Kyle Bela-Grafitsky, Executive Director of New York State PTA, and I'm so glad to have you guys online tonight. Jamie, if you could come on screen, that would be fantastic. Thanks for joining us. So we're recording this so we can send this out to all of our actual statewide audience. I know we kind of targeted unit leaders tonight on this because we really wanted to have this first conversation with our unit leaders across the state. Then we're going to have another conversation with all of our fantastic families. But this, so excited. So Jamie Costello, thank you for being here with us. We know, I'm a parent myself, and we know, that gaming continues to be an issue for our children, and how it relates really to gambling and addiction is really important. So Jamie, thanks for being a part of this conversation. We're going to use that chat box today. So if everyone wants to look at the bottom of their screen for chat, you're going to type in questions right in there for Jamie. We're going to run no more than an hour like we normally do. And again, we're going to send this out to all of our members, unit leaders statewide, and then schedule another conversation probably in December or January to follow up on this conversation with a greater audience. So Jamie, I want to turn things over to you, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks. I am super excited to be here. So often we talk to addiction audiences, and so it's really exciting for us to be able to talk to an audience that is not specific to addiction treatment or prevention. I am going to share my screen. I believe I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. You think after 2 years of a Zoom that I'd have this down by now, right?
Jamie, try again. I just changed some settings.
That's okay. I think it was me. I was making an adjustment on my end. Okay. Can you guys see my PowerPoint now? I can't see anybody's heads.
We can.
Thank you. If anybody wants to turn their video on, feel free. I know it's evening time. I won't judge you for whatever.
I know our members are used to video off, so that's how we do our webinars. We do our webinars video off so we can focus on the speaker. So please take no offense to that, but that's what our members are used to.
I won't take any offense to that then. Don't take any offense to the fact that I am business on top with sweatpants on the bottom. Not gonna lie. So thanks for having me tonight. I'm really excited. I'm going to make this as, I think, interactive as I possibly can with chat. If anybody is interested in participating, it would be helpful to get everybody's input as we go. I think you'll get more benefit out of it too. So like I said, my name's Jamie. I work at the New York Council on Problem Gambling. I don't know if anybody has heard of us. Oh, everybody share where you are. That would be fantastic. I'm going to ask more questions coming up too. So New York Council on Problem Gambling, we cover the entire state of New York. So while we cover the whole state, we are not a state agency. We are a non-for-profit that is statewide. We do have regional staff in every area of the state, which is really exciting. Oh, I see some Rensselaer, some Westchester, Yonkers, a little bit all over. For this half of the state anyway, so far. So New York Council on Problem Gambling, we have 3 goals in mind. One is to increase public awareness that gambling can become a problem for some people. One is to advocate for support services and treatment for people who are struggling. And the thing I like to point out is also that we maintain a neutral stance on gambling. A lot of times we come in and we talk about problem gambling and folks assume that we are the gambling police. We are not anti-gambling in any way. We are anti-youth gambling. I will say that. We are completely supportive of abstinence of gambling for youth, but we do maintain a neutral stance on gambling in general. So we are not for or against the gambling activities themselves, just to clear that up. So I'm going to ask you guys to participate in the chat box for those who are able to. I introduced who I am, introduced our agency. So why do you think that we want to talk to parents about underage gambling, and why do you care? So answer one or both of those questions in the chat box. I'm going to follow along. Where is New City, New York, Arlene? That's one I'm not familiar with. Okay, if you could in the chat box, why do you think we want to talk to parents about underage gambling, and why do you care about the issue maybe? Oh, Rockland County, thanks Arlene. I'll look that one up on the map. Parents might not realize their child is exposed to gambling. Gambling is addictive. Woohoo, go Patrice. Gaming is getting out of controls for our students. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that blurred line too between the two things. Gaming is, I have 2 boys, 12 and 10, so I'm right there with you. I'm a parent also. Yeah, worry about all these different coin packages and loot boxes and all of those sorts of things. Absolutely. Kids have easier access with the internet. They certainly do. A lot of kids have internets in their pocket, right? Right on their phone. It's dangerous for kids and parents. Yes, it can be addictive for kids. It can be addictive. I think a lot of people think it can be addictive for only adults, but kids can get addicted to things too. Perfect. I appreciate that you guys came out tonight to spend your evening with us listening, even if you're just listening. I'm going to talk about gaming and gambling. We're going to talk about emerging trends, and we're going to talk about risks and consequences, and then we're going to have some action steps. I do have some data in here for people who are data geeks like I am. I have some actionable items for people and some interesting graphics. So I hope I hit everybody's needs today. So I want to talk first about the amount of kids in New York State who are gambling. This data is a little bit outdated. It's 2014, 2015 data. OASAS, the Office of Addiction Services and Supports, is redoing the survey in the spring of 2022, I believe. So we hope to have updated data next year. But about 40% of New York State youth between the ages of 12 and 17 have gambled in the last year. So if you could, in the chat box, think about what you think kids are gambling with. We're talking about gambling first, and then we'll talk about gaming too. What are kids gambling on? What types of forms of gambling are they participating in? I appreciate Kyle's honesty. 12 and 17, yeah, it's not even legal.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to chime in and say, I can't even believe that. I mean, not that it's unbelievable, but it's alarming to me that we're talking about 40% of our children, we're talking children here, that actually maybe gambled. Huh.
Yeah, almost 40%. I'm interested to see what it will be in 2022, because between 14, 15 and 2021, 2022, the landscape has changed a lot. Plus we had COVID. So I'm not sure what that's going to look like. Patrice, thank you for adding in sports. Yeah, that is one of the top ones. So the top 3 types of gambling among youth between 12 and 17 in New York State are playing lottery, lotto and scratch offs, betting money on raffles and charity games, and betting money on sports. So those are the top 3 in that order. Ironically, if you think about it, playing the lottery, lotto, and scratch offs, it is illegal for youth to purchase those items. So where are they getting them? They're getting them from family members and Christmas cards and birthday cards, Hanukkah gifts, gift baskets, things like that. Money on raffles and charity games, those take place in our community everywhere. Sports events, I would argue to say PTA events. Again, we're not against all of these things, but something to think about: where are youth accessing some of the behaviors or activities that are a little more risky? And betting money on sports is right up there too. And as you might know, the sports gambling landscape in New York State has recently changed. We now have vendors, and sports gambling is legal. Mobile sports betting. So we have sports betting at brick and mortar casinos. And then we also have mobile sports betting, which will probably roll out before the Super Bowl, I imagine. So that landscape is really changing for youth and what they're seeing and how that's being communicated. So here's another trivia question. Oh, Kyle, I didn't even think about scratch offs as a gambling activity. I don't think anybody does. Gambling is risking something of value, can't see my hands, on a game of chance. So if it has those 3 elements, you can lose money. You might get your money back. You might not get your money back. And you can't guarantee the outcome, 100% guarantee. It's gambling. So scratch offs and raffles and charity games and bingo for money and sports betting and lottery items, racetrack betting, those are all forms of gambling. So 30% of these youth between 12 and 17 who are gambling, what age do you think they started at? At or before what age? If they're gambling 12 to 17, what age do you think they started at? Melissa, your daughter got scratch offs trick-or-treating? I might have lost my mind if somebody put that in my kid's trick-or-treat basket. And I'm not usually the parent that loses my mind. That is crazy. Okay, 12, maybe 10, 6, 8, 12. The answer is 10. They began gambling at or before age 10. So kids who are gambling now started well before now. They didn't start at 11, they didn't start at 15, they didn't start at 16, they started at or before age 10. So if you think about anybody who has 10-year-olds, or youth who are younger, I think a lot of times we don't talk about these things with kids because we assume that they're not doing it. But kids who are gambling now start at 10 or younger, have started at 10 or younger. And if you talk to people who are addicted to gambling, oftentimes they start very young. The younger you start something, the more likely you are to continue. That includes eating healthy, exercising, and being outside. Also things like drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes, and gambling. So yeah, so these are little kids that we're talking about. So now I want to switch to gaming because I'm guessing that's a lot of people's concern is gaming. I'm just going to go ahead and
I'm just going to remind everybody just to keep those microphones muted. I think we're getting a little bit of a back. Thanks, Jamie.
That's okay. I took care of it. You're welcome. We did a 3-hour Zoom training this afternoon too. So I feel like I'm right in the Zoom mode. So the percentage of high school youth who played video or computer games or used a computer for 3 or more hours a day. This data does not include using your tablet, your computer, or in-school screens for schoolwork. This is just playing video or computer games or using a computer for things like social media over the 3 or more hours per day. So if you look in 2017, it was about 30% of youth were on there 3 or more hours a day. And then you look in 2019, and we've seen sort of a steady increase here. 2017 and 19 were pretty similar. It was about 40%. This is through the CDC YRBS. We have not gotten data for 2021 yet. And I think that they're carrying that out right now in the fall. So we won't have that data until the spring. But you can see that just the screen time for playing video games and computer games is increasing. And ironically, about 40% of kids have been playing video games or computer games or using a computer for 3 or more hours a day. That number is the same of the youth who have gambled between 12 and 17. It's about 40%. So a lot of our kids are at risk. And those numbers, some of them may overlap, but it doesn't mean that all of them do. We have daily video gaming among youth. This is just video gaming. So not watching YouTube, social media, things like that, just video gaming. This was 2015 data. I can't seem to put my hands on more recent data, but daily video gaming among youth is 21 minutes between 2 and 4-year-olds, about 42 minutes a day between 5 and 8-year-olds, 2 hours a day between 8 and 12-year-olds, and 2.5 hours a day between 13 and 17-year-olds. And if you think about it, I have, like I said, I have 2 little boys, 10 and 12. And so they're starting to play sports and they're starting to be parts of clubs and things like that. And this boggles my mind that we have enough time to play sports, go to school, and play video games for this amount of time. That's a lot of time that our kids are spending on screens and playing video games. So it's important for us to be aware of what they're doing, what's happening, and what that looks like so that we can have those conversations with them. Now, the relationship between gaming and gambling among adolescents, we talk about problem gaming or problematic gambling. We're talking about any time that the gambling or the gaming causes a problem. Our agency, the New York Council on Problem Gambling, defines problem gambling just in that way. Any gambling that causes a problem. So if your gambling is causing trouble in your relationships or your finances or at school, if you're not sleeping as much because you're gambling, those are all problem gambling. And so the same would be true for problematic gaming. We talk about these two, the relationship between them. The more a youth, when we talk about adolescents specifically, excuse me, the more that a youth is playing video games, the more likely they are to be gambling, and vice versa. If youth are gambling, they're more likely to be playing video games. Youth who are gambling at a problematic level are more likely, gaming at a problematic level are more likely to experience gambling problems. So these two things are really intertwined and affect each other in both ways. So if you have a youth who you say, you know, my youth is not gambling, not at all. They're not risking money. They're not placing bets. That's fantastic. We love to hear that. But if they are gaming and you're concerned about that, that increases their risk for having a gambling problem down the road. So just something to think about, that the relationship, not only are gaming and gambling intertwined, but the relationship is intertwined also. So gambling or gaming. In the chat box, if you don't mind, just to keep us all here and together, what's the difference between gambling and gaming? If you had to say like one difference, what would be the difference between those two things? Difference between gambling and gaming. You're spending money and gambling. Gaming is just playing for fun, not playing for money. Not hoping to get money out of it or not spending money. Although kids can spend money on games. Yep. Gambling is risking something of value with a chance to win something better. So you're hoping for a positive outcome to not only get your money back, but to win more money, and you're putting money in. Gaming is playing a game for entertainment only, and you're not risking any money, you're not losing any money, you're none of those things. So there's not the chance that you'll lose, and there's not the chance that you'll win more. So those two things have to be there. Kyle also points out that gambling is state regulated. That is correct. Gambling is state regulated, including even bingo that they have at churches and fundraiser raffles and things like that. There are regulations and guidelines around that, whereas gaming, not so much. You may hear the term though, and we'll talk about language, but you may hear the term the New York State Gaming Commission. That's where we start to get things a little fuzzy, is that the New York State Gaming Commission oversees gambling in New York State, but they call it gaming because the hope is that they're giving off the feel that it's just for entertainment, where in fact it's actually gambling. Maria, gaming is more socially acceptable amongst kids. Absolutely, gaming is definitely more socially acceptable among kids than gambling. You'd be surprised at how many kids are gambling that we just don't talk about or hear about. So when you think about your kids on your devices or the kids in your community, what are they doing on those devices? Are they playing specific video games? Are they watching things? Are they socializing with their friends? Do you know what they're doing? Maybe you're not sure. That's okay too. Go ahead, put in the chat box. What are your kids or the kids in your community doing on their devices? Roblox, yeah, that's a big one. Watching YouTube, watching TikTok, yep, TikTok. Texting, gaming, watching videos, Minecraft, yeah. Any other big ones among this crowd? I don't know how old all your kids are. So I'm guessing with TikTok, texting, gaming, watching videos, Minecraft, and Roblox, we're looking at a group of about 10 parents of 8 to 12-year-olds. This is going to be my guess. 2, 5, and 7, yep. These darn coin packages. Are those the ones that they're purchasing, Kyle? You can win, you can lose, yep. Yep. Ages 4 and up. Watching some of these things? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to share some of the emerging trends that are happening in the gambling field that are really bringing gambling and gaming together. You see I have a stop sign on the screen because I do want to point out that I do have some pictures of examples from websites for gaming and gambling. I am conscious and aware that that could be a trigger for some people if people are in recovery. We really try hard not to share any images of gambling or gaming, no dice, no poker chips, no video game pictures, no sports pools, anything like that, because we don't want to trigger anybody and make people uncomfortable. So I'm just putting out the warning that I will have some things on the screen that will portray gambling and gaming, just to be conscious of the audience. So we have esports. Has anybody heard of esports? You can just click the little reactions or raise your hand or something if you'd like. Esports are competitive video game tournaments. So this is actually, I'm an adjunct at a community college also, and they're hiring for an esports coach. So they will be putting a team of children or team together of college students who will be participating in video game tournaments. Now, is it gambling? Is it not gambling? Well, if we're not putting money and placing money and betting on it, it's not gambling, but it definitely brings the same element in that we see with sports competitions and things like that, that now are getting more attention in gambling. So competitive video game tournaments are one of the newer things. So as our children, who 2, 5, 7, 9, 11 start to grow up, it will be an extracurricular activity that they can participate in college. So just being aware that those things are out there is really important. My son, my 12-year-old says all the time, can I join the such and such tournament for whatever game he's playing? And it's only $100 to join, but I could win $1,000 or $10,000. And in the back of my mind, I think we have to have that conversation about your chances of winning. Yes, it's based on skill, but it is still a video game. It is against other people. You can't guarantee an outcome. Are we willing to risk that amount of money? All of those sorts of conversations over what seems to be a really innocent question on his part, like, can I just join this tournament, right? So we have esports is definitely an up and coming trend. Oh, your high school has an esports team. I've seen a few high schools. I live in the Adirondacks, so pretty rural up here. We have fewer esports teams at high schools, but I have heard about it in a few places. So just something to be aware of. Another thing, social casinos. So this is an app or an online space where individuals, and they're looking to better fund it. Yes. High schooler. Yeah, I'm going to go back to esports. This is a good conversation now. I have a high schooler. They admire the tournament winners. It's the same as sports tournaments, right? When we have a ski race, we're yay for the person who won the ski race, or yay for the football team who won. And now we're bringing video games into that camaraderie and that competition. So now we're going to have kids admiring other people winning at video games, which again, I'm not saying is good or bad, but we just have to think about what message we're sending and how we're framing our conversations around that. It still fascinates me that video games are called sports now. I cannot get over that. Esports teams compete at the high school level. Yep, many students can earn scholarships to compete at college. It's definitely a new college major. It is promoted as inclusive too. It is an alternative for students who maybe aren't athletic but want to be a part of a team, but aren't a part of a debate team or something like that. And it is including a whole group of kids who weren't included in that before too. But just like any other activity, we just need to make sure that we're talking to kids about it. I actually had a long conversation with an e-sports coach at a college talking about how he balances wellness and health and safety and make sure the kids keep their grades up and they're only allowed to practice for so many hours a day and things like that. It was really interesting. So if you have a chance to connect with an esports coach about how they handle health and wellness and their academic policies and things like that, it's really an interesting conversation. So social casinos, this is an app or an online space where individuals can play casino style games with their friends. So this may or may not be for money. There's a difference between paying to compete and competing within a school program. Absolutely, Jenny, agreed. There's a difference between being a part of a team and competing versus paying to compete in a worldwide tournament. So social casinos, you'll notice on the screen, I have a blackjack social casino. We have Lucas, Anna, and Mike who are competing. The trick is that Lucas and Anna and Mike might be 80-year-old men. They could be 25-year-old women. We have no idea who they are. Those are just avatars on the screen and made up names that they made up for themselves. So there's a number of risks involved in this, and some of them overlap in the gaming world. One is I can pick whatever name I want. I can be whoever I want online. If I want to be a 70-year-old man, I can be a 70-year-old man online. If I want to be a 12-year-old woman or girl, I can be a 12-year-old girl online. So I think a lot of youth who are participating in these sorts of activities are engaging with people online when we don't know who they are. So thinking about the safety of that. And then we bring in the element of gambling. So we have avatars, we don't know who they are, we're interacting, and social casinos is just that. You play with or against other people. There are usually chat boxes, you can connect with them and message with them. And these don't have to be for money, but they're still risky. Why is a social casino online, other than the element of the social aspect of it? But if we're not playing money, why is this form of online game or app risky for kids to participate in? I'll let you put that in the chat box. Social casinos, if I'm not paying for this, aside from the element that I don't know who I'm playing with, why is a social casino online and having kids playing casino-like games online risky? Maria, they can get the same high from winning. It's the same addictive behavior. It's the same reward loop that our brain is used to. Absolutely. So even if I'm not paying to play anything in here, they could chat with other people who might be predators. Correct. They could chat with other people. It normalizes it. Patrice, thanks. Great word. It normalizes the behavior or activity of gambling. So if kids are participating in this online, It normalizes poker. And if I can win, just this example for specifically, if I can win and I see myself racking up a lot of points in this poker game, you'll see Mike has 2,800, Anna has 3,800. They call them dollars in here because that's how people associate. They associate money within there. So $3,800 in the game might not be $3,800 in real life. But even if I'm not paying, if I can earn, I can win, those sorts of things. These sorts of games are not regulated in any way in most cases, which means they can create it so that I win every single time if they want. They can change the algorithm. They can do whatever they want with the cards. Once we start paying to play, then it becomes a business model. And so this game might be the same game, but it might be pay to play instead of free to play, which you might hear those different terms, pay to play versus free to play. If it's pay to play, obviously it's a business and the company needs to win. The house has the advantage. So if I'm a kid and I'm used to playing in this social aspect and it becomes normal and I want to do it more often, maybe in real life, but now I see myself winning. So I want to do it online for money. I go into that pay to play, not going to do as well. It's a different group. It's a different algorithm in the system. The house has to win and win money. So we get in that dangerous zone where we think that drinking the Shirley Temple is the same as drinking the alcoholic beverage, right? If we're comparing it to something that we see in the daily life, we're normalizing the idea of having mocktails and having cocktails or playing blackjack. Then kids want to play blackjack for free. So not only do we have the predatory aspect and the not knowing who you're playing with or giving out your own information inadvertently, if kids put their own picture or their own name on it and they don't have that safety, but there's also that normalization of playing casino games. And then sports betting. Sports betting is expanding in New York State. So we do have fantasy sports in New York State. You'll see all the different types I have on here. On the left, we have the basketball brackets, March Madness brackets. On the top left, we have a fantasy soccer team that somebody put together. We have a football pool here, and now we have mobile sports betting in New York. These are all forms of gambling, sports gambling. It used to be, growing up, it was sports betting and you place bets with your friends or in a Super Bowl pool at work or something like that. Now you can go online, you can bet with millions of people. Everybody promotes it. ESPN has shows dedicated just to fantasy sports and understanding the stats between the different players. You see promotions all over. Youth sports has Super Bowl pools. A lot of youth sports teams have Super Bowl pools. Ours actually had some strange buy a ticket and it had to match the lottery ticket outcome. And it was very odd. I just said, here, take my $100 and I'm not selling the tickets. But we think about all these things. In the beginning, we say, oh, we don't realize that kids are gambling. They are. But then we start to talk about these things. We have kids buying raffle tickets. We have kids buying squares and football pools. We have kids drafting fantasy teams and they're paying for it. So again, not for or against, but what message are we sending? I used to work for a Boys and Girls Club and I ran a clubhouse and we were raising money. And my board said that they wanted to have a wine tasting, which I was, okay, that's fine. But they wanted the kids and the parents to come and help. That was where I drew the line. So, if we have a wine tasting, what message are we giving the kids if they're helping with the wine tasting? That's not really a place I want to have youth at. So thinking about when we are participating in these things, are we involving kids? What message are we sending kids by having Super Bowl pools for fundraisers and things like that? Are kids involving in them? Even the dance studios and cheer teams? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the only one I haven't seen with gambling is Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts. I haven't seen a Girl Scout or Boy Scout gambling fundraiser yet. Doesn't mean it's not out there, but I haven't seen it. So we think about, I think a lot of people were surprised in the beginning. We talked about, wow, 40% of kids are gambling. But if I had a poll right now, I imagine more of you would say, oh yeah, kids are gambling because we have raffles and charity pools and things like that. One thing I didn't put in here that I just realized is missing, it's very unfortunate, are loot boxes. So this is kind of like what Kyle was talking about. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute and just come back on screen. This is what Kyle was talking about with the coin packages. So the coin packages are in-game valuables, kind of like a skin for your gun or a new outfit for your guy or parachute in Fortnite, fancy parachute or weapon in Fortnite. You can purchase those and use cash or card, not cash, but you can use a card, so your own real live money, to purchase valuables. There are also these things called loot boxes. Have you guys heard of loot boxes? I'm just going to assume you're nodding your heads yes. So loot boxes. Loot boxes are fake boxes. They are treasure boxes. They usually look like little treasure boxes. You can buy them in games. So a loot box might cost $5, and it might only be 5 coins from your cash that you have that you purchased with your real money. Or it might be 5 actual dollars that you have to spend to buy the loot box. The thing with loot boxes is that if I buy a loot box, I don't know what's in it. So that's where we get that really blurred line of gambling. So we have kids who say, I want a new outfit for my guy and I need a new gun because I need to advance in this game. I'm going to buy this loot box and hope that I get it. You can't guarantee what's in a loot box, which is what makes it gambling. So I'm paying $5 of my in-game currency or of my $5 out of my parents' account to purchase a loot box that may or may not have some good loot in it. So loot boxes can be, they mimic, somebody said earlier, they mimic the same rush of the like, oh, I might get exactly what I want. I did. I'm really excited. I got what I wanted. Or, oh, I didn't get it. I just spent $5. I lost that $5, which might not seem like a lot to you, but when we're talking about a youth's brain with that rush of adrenaline and then that letdown, it's mimicking the same thing. So let me go back to sharing my screen. So loot boxes, if you guys have questions about any of these trends, just put them in the chat box. I'd be happy to talk. Stacy, V-Bucks, kids breakdown. V-Bucks are V-Bucks Roblox or those Fortnite? I can't remember. Yeah, V-Bucks, kids breaking down because they don't have enough V-Bucks to buy something, right? So thinking about the way their brain is working and how that's happening and how they have to have the new best thing, right? So why are these trends so attractive to kids? Kids' brains are on fire. You guys are PTA parents, you're unit leaders, you know that an adolescent's brain is pruning and figuring out what it's doing and making these decisions and using their emotions because their decision-making part of their brain, which is all the way up here, is not done developing yet. It's figuring out what are the things I like, what are the things I don't like. I need to try new things and take new risks. That's the way the teenage brain is built, which these things are all high excitement, low effort, high excitement, instant gratification. My friends are doing it. It's new, it's risky. So the teenage brain and the new forms of gambling and gaming that are out there are really a match made in heaven, or the opposite if you go that way, but they're really made for each other. So it's really, those games and forms of gambling are really made to feed into a kid's brains. I think about fantasy sports versus daily fantasy sports. Fantasy sports, you draft your team, you follow them for the season. Daily fantasy sports, I can change my team and get feedback and rewards every single day based on how that person is doing. So much more instant gratification these days. So what are some of the consequences? Consequences of underage gambling. I'll share all these slides with Kyle also, so she can put them up somewhere. Consequences of underage gambling, not gambling, but gambling.
Jamie, I just want to share, we're actually going to put this entire presentation on YouTube and right on the website. So it'll be fantastic.
Perfect. Thank you. We have higher rates of depression among kids who are gambling. So think about that 40% of 12 to 17-year-olds who have gambled at some point in their life or in the last 30 days. We have depression, we have alcohol and substance abuse disorders, suicidal ideation and attempt, anxiety, poor general health, delinquency, crime, disrupted relationships, and poor academic performance. So we may not be talking to kids about gambling, but I think if we ask parents, almost any parent who wants to prevent their child from being depressed and attempting suicide and having anxiety and poor general health, they would agree with that, right? So if we can prevent some of that gambling happening at a young age, we can also prevent these things. And then the risks of gaming. So not gambling, but just video gaming, straight up video gaming, not loot box gambling and all those sorts of things. We have cyberbullying, sexual harassment, aggression, depression, serious fights and weapons at school, and desensitization, and then potential for addiction. For the, you see I have an asterisk, girls, depression is usually higher than boys. And then serious fights, weapons to school, and potential for addiction is higher in boys than girls. And this is just kids who are video gaming at that excessive rate, that few hours a day.
Hey, Jamie, could you explain what desensitization is a little bit more, flush that out a
Yeah.
little bit more? Because that's something that I haven't really heard yet.
So desensitization, yeah, I haven't talked about it here. And I think a lot of people don't talk about it. So try to think of the best example that makes sense for this. So desensitization, if I am constantly playing a video game where I am shooting people in combat in a war, when I see combat or a war on television, I don't have as high of a reaction because I see that on TV all the time. And then if I watch that more on TV and in movies and things like that, it gets a little more real, but I don't have the reaction. So then I become desensitized to it because I'm playing the video game, seeing it all the time here. And then I see it in real life. I don't have the same reaction to that. You could also say the same for people who see violence in their home all the time. If I see violence somewhere out and about, I'm in shock, I'm uncomfortable, it triggers something for me, right? It feels traumatic. People who see that violence all the time in their homes or in their communities, they don't react like that because their body has learned, I'm going to see this on a regular basis. So I need to crank down the way my brain reacts to it. And I don't get that jump anymore. So desensitization could be, it's not shocking to see guns anymore. It's not shocking to see violence. And so it's easier for me. It's almost, I think about like the gateway drug, right? We smoke cigarettes first and that is like risky. And then all of a sudden it's not risky anymore. So they take the next step and then that's risky. Desensitization is very similar. The more you see something, the less shocking or uncomfortable it is to you, even if you're just seeing it in a video game or on TV or something. Does that help, Kyle?
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Somebody messaged me and says, you just don't get fazed anymore, right? Nothing shocks you. You don't get fazed by these things anymore. Absolutely. Questions about any of the trends and things that we saw? I know you guys have been punching stuff in as we went along, but I wanted to make sure I built in a little bit of space here. Okay, I'm going to go on, but if you think of something, let me know. So our goal is to get everybody involved in just having this conversation about gaming and gambling and how they're impacting our kids. And then we're going to talk about what we can do about it. So our goal is just to get everybody involved at whatever level is comfortable for you as a parent, you as a unit leader, you as a community member. So the best tool for finding and preventing problems of any sort among youth. What's the best tool that you have to recognize that something is wrong or something is going on in a student or in a child in your community or your neighbor's kid or your kid? What's the best tool for figuring out what's wrong? Oh, Kyle, you read the slide. A slide of these two boys talking and listening and paying attention. That's it. It's just listening to what they're saying and asking them about these games. Like, oh, you're playing that game about poker online. Like, are you playing for money? You know that poker is gambling, right? Like, that's not cool. Just having conversations and listening to kids and asking them what's happening in their lives. And so a couple things when we're talking and we're listening to kids, we want to be sure that one of the messages that we're giving is that underage gambling is a risky behavior. We all talk to our kids about drugs, sex, and rock and roll. How many people talk to their kids about gambling as risky? Not many. Not many health classes talk about it, mental health education. We just don't, it's not talked about enough. So until we start associating in kids' minds that underage gambling is risky and those two words together, the kids aren't going to get the message. So even though we might internalize and think it's important, if we're not saying it out loud and they're not associating gambling, risk, gambling, risk, gambling, risk, they don't understand that. The messages they get are gambling, entertainment, fun, sexy, cool, exciting. They don't get gambling, risky. So we have to make that connection for them. I appreciate the honesty, Kyle. Gaming versus gambling when we're having conversations. Semantics is important. If you are constantly referring to poker and the casino and slot machines and scratch offs as gaming, kids hear game, and kids have been getting games for hundreds of years. Game is an innocuous, neutral, simple word, right? And game is positive. I'm going to play a game with my family as opposed to gambling. So once we get gambling associated with risk, we have to also make sure that the way that we're communicating with our kids and our communities is that gaming and gambling are two different things. Gambling involves risk, hoping to get a reward, and an element of chance that I cannot control. Gaming is playing Monopoly with your family for fun, or playing Mario Brothers or Mario Kart for fun, or even a game with your friends, Roblox, for fun. That's gaming, right? The second you start putting money in there and hoping to get more money and being upset when you don't, then we're looking at gambling. So making sure that you're just making that distinction when you're talking to kids is really important. It's okay to use the grown-up words with kids. So what can you do to prevent gambling and gaming problems among youth that you mentor or support in your community or in your schools? I have some tips for parents, and then I have some tips for community leaders, such as unit leaders. Boundaries. Boundaries are important and they are uncomfortable, but make them and let your kids know what the boundaries are in your house around gaming, around gambling, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. Do your homework. I don't mean your kid's math homework or his or her science project, although that's fantastic if you want to help with that. But do your homework about the games that they're playing. Do your homework about how much money is in there. Do your homework about what safeguards that you can put on video games so they can't spend purchases and have accidental purchases on your credit card. Place games in common areas. My kids hate me for this one because we have one television in our house, and that's the only television that's hooked up to a video game console. Their iPads can walk around, but that video game console is dead center in the middle of the house. Drives them nuts. But I know what games my kids are playing. We talk about it. I can ask questions, things like that. So place them in common areas. Review and monitor the interactive and online features. So be familiar, as horrible as it is to look at all the things and the features and the text and things like that. Review those and monitor those. You can set up alerts on your phone so that you get a notification of how much your kid has been on a certain app on your iPad and who they're talking to. How is gaming that different? They might spend and win money, but there are rewards and prizes. Maria, I think in most cases, it's so close. I think legally there's a line there, but as a parent or as a community leader, it's so blurred between that gambling and gaming, which is why we're starting to have this conversation, because it's so close. Even if they're not spending money, like you said, it's so close. It's not that different. They're getting the same rush, the same spike of adrenaline. So great observation. Eye-opening and scary. I agree, Maria, but I appreciate that you're listening, and hopefully you guys can take this to your communities. I'll give you some tips for that at the end too. Make it social. So early COVID, I was quarantined. My children and family were not, because I was exposed, they weren't. So I was in my bedroom for 6 days by myself. My kids told me what app to download, and I played these crazy games. I played Among Us with them. I played Roblox with them. It was a social activity, right? And when you're doing something socially, you're less likely to develop a problem because other people are watching and they're kind of monitoring. You can also play these silly games that you may or may not like with your kids. It'll get them to open up to you. You can start to understand it a little bit. So it's okay to make it social. Discuss in-game purchases ahead of time. Make sure you have settings set so that kids cannot make purchases and be gambling or paying for things without your notice. I have a little thing on we have $0 in our Microsoft account. So we have to do all that ahead of time. We have to think ahead and plan ahead. And on my phone, I get a notification and they have to request it every single time they try to purchase something, even if it's free. I decline them all the time. Make sure there are limits. So you can do this, you cannot do that. You are limited to X time a day, or you can spend $5 every month on whatever you want for video games, but that's it. You have to set limits and make sure you're talking about those and that they are clear and your children know about them. So I want to talk about some policy change, which people think about policy and they get like, we're going to create laws. Policy isn't always laws. But policy change as a unit leader or as a community member, or there's even policies that we have in our houses, right, are really important so that we can change the environments that our kids are growing up in. So looking at codes of conduct. With esports, they have codes of conduct, so you can look at that, but also codes of conduct for school, what you are or aren't allowed to participate in at school. I don't know how many times my kid comes home and says, on our Chromebook today, we played games in study hall. I'm like, what? You're playing games at school? How long are you doing that for? What games are you playing? What's happening? So think about codes of conduct, and if something does happen, or if you are gambling at a school activity or event, what is the result of that? What is the consequence? Technology use. We have some libraries that have instituted technology use policies. You aren't allowed to gamble. Maybe you aren't allowed to game, or you aren't allowed to spend money. So you can look at that for your school specifically, or your community library or community center, neighborhood center. And obviously you could have your family technology use policy. Healthy fundraising activities. Again, I'm not the gambling police to come in and say you can't do any gambling fundraising, don't do any of it, but please think about the way that that's communicated to kids, and whether or not kids are allowed to participate. Are they allowed to buy raffle tickets? Are they allowed to sell them? Is it strictly for adults to support the youth? What message are we sending with all of those? And just being conscious and making a conscious decision with that is really important, so that you can have that conversation, and however it turns out, but then you can say you really thought about it. And then there are in-home policies like family agreements. We agree that we are going to do this or not going to do this. And house rules. It's okay to make a house rule. I'm in charge of the house. Dad and I are in charge of the house. There are some times where it is a family agreement, but there are other times where it's just the rule because we just live here and that's the way it goes. It's important to have those rules, but it's important to talk to the kids and make sure that they're aware of those rules also. I want to share some resources, and then we'll do questions if anybody has questions. I have a role play if there's time, but it's okay if there's not. New York State PTA and NYCPG, I've been working closely with Kyle for the last, I think, almost 2 years, maybe 1.5 years. We're really excited to be able to have a page on their website so that we can share tips for having conversations with kids about underage gambling. There's some videos on there. There's a fact sheet link on there, all sorts of information that you might want to check out. We also have a partnership with Mahaney's, the Mental Health Association of New York State. They're school mental health resource training centers. So if you are looking for resources more specific to just schools and not only parents, they have a page on their website for problem gambling prevention. There are 3 or 4 videos about incorporating gambling information into curriculums as a risky behavior, health curriculums, how to talk about it as a mental health issue, activities and discussions, things like that. There's talktokids.org. We have conversations on there, videos, fact sheets, nyproblemgamblinghelp.org. This one thanks Kyle for putting that in the chat. This one I want to point out, we do have staff in every single region in New York State. We have 7 regions, so we cover all the way from Western, so Buffalo, Niagara County, all the way to the tip of Long Island, Nassau and Suffolk County, Plattsburgh down. So we have regional staff in every area who support people who are struggling with gambling problems. So that's gambling has impacted their life in a negative way, not just video gaming, but gambling. Could be a youth gambling problem. It could be a parent gambling problem, a community leader gambling problem, maybe a family member. Unfortunately, some of us have family members who have been affected by gambling addiction. So we do have staff in every region who can support that. And at nyproblemgamblinghelp.org, there's all the regional contact information. A couple regions have text information, there's phone numbers, there's also an online screening tool. So I'd encourage you to check that out. Gamequitters.com is gaming specific information, resources, and support. So that site is for people who are struggling with gaming addiction or excessive gaming. They have healthy alternatives. They have online support groups. They have people you can talk to, and a lot of resources. That's a great website, some videos also. And then I like to point out Common Sense Media, just because I'm a parent and I use it, and I think it's really helpful. So for those who aren't aware, commonsensemedia.org is a media-specific resource for parents and families. You can look up video games, you can look up movies, you can look up television shows or books, and it will tell you what the rating is based on that site, not the rating from a fancy movie company. The rating based on that site, what age they think it's appropriate for. They have parents who review media pieces to say, this is what I liked about it, this is what I didn't. They also have kids reviewing it. So the kids and the parents all create the feedback for that site. Super helpful when you're thinking about, like I just went to the movies last week with my friend and a group of kids who were 5 to 12 years old. So we used Common Sense Media to see whether or not certain movies that we were looking at were appropriate for that wide age range and what our kids might experience or see when they watch the movie that we were ready or not ready for. So I would highly suggest everybody checks out commonsensemedia.org. And coming soon, it's not quite finished, but we are working with PTA to put together a fundraising alternatives booklet. We have some alternatives. I know the PTA has put out not regulations, but recommendations for fundraising, healthy fundraising activities and gambling specific fundraising. And the Gaming Commission has regulations as well. The link will be in there. So keep an eye out for that one. That will be really exciting. And that's all I have, unless you guys want to do a role play. If you want to, you can come on screen, but not everybody likes role plays. So we'll see if anybody
Jamie,
actually.
you want to stop sharing your screen and see if anybody wants to do a role play?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if anybody is interested, but this was fantastic information. If anybody has any questions for Jamie, please put them in the chat. Jamie, what's your email? Let's take that in the chat in case people have other questions. They can connect with you directly.
I'm going to put it right in the email.
Yeah, that's great.
And I just want to let everybody know that we, although our staff in our regional centers only deal with problem gambling, we are right now working with OASAS to train all of their prevention providers, which there are 142 across the whole state. So the whole state's covered. They're all trained to do presentations about gaming and gambling and the link and the blurred lines, and very similar presentation to what I just did. So if anybody wants a presentation, you can reach out to me and I'll connect you with the provider in your area. We're just finishing up their training right now. So.
Oh, that's great. And I see Helen Hoffman on here. She is our first vice president over the field. And I'm almost thinking that this might be a fantastic presentation, Helen, and I see Melissa and some other leaders on here, obviously, to maybe do on a region basis, Helen. So why don't we add that to the list? Because I think, Jamie, that offer is fantastic. So we have 12 regions and something like this. I mean, obviously we've taped this. We're going to send it out to our members, but maybe having this on a regional basis, over the winter or spring, I think would be fantastic. Hal, yes? Yeah, I know Helen's given a thumbs up, so that'd be great too.
Perfect. Yeah, we can definitely make that happen.
Well, thanks for joining us, Jamie. On behalf of our president, Dana Platon, our governance team, and all of our members, we're so excited to work with you. We're glad we taped this presentation. We're going to make this presentation available on our website and in our convention portal that's coming up this coming Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So all of our convention delegates can watch it right in the portal, put it on our leadership development page for webinars that are available, and then email it directly out to all of our members. Jamie, thanks for the time. It's fantastic.
It was wonderful. I had a great time, and I know your videos weren't on. I'm okay with that. I'll be okay with that. But thank you for participating in the chat and for asking questions. If anybody has any questions afterward, if you just search Jamie Costello, New York and gambling, you will find my email address, but I have typed it in the chat box and I'm doing that again. So just reach out to me anytime you want. I'm here to help. Yeah, that's fantastic, Jamie. Thanks so much, everybody, and have a wonderful night. And if we don't speak with you before Thanksgiving, have a wonderful Thanksgiving, everybody. And enjoy your convention. Bye.
Fabulous workshop. Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Helen. It was wonderful.
Really
being
was
here.
great.
Great.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.